In terms of the topic, it's Africa's human rights challenges, progress, problems, and prospects. I think it's a wide topic, and we couldn't have two better speakers to do the job. I want to introduce our two speakers. We have a keynote speaker today, and she's, as I said, one of the most eminent legal personalities that this country has produced. Navi Pillay served as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights from 2008 to 2014. In 1999, she was elected Judge President of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which she joined in 1995, having been elected as a judge by the UN General Assembly. Between 2003 and 2008, she served as a judge on the International Criminal Court. I just want to introduce Barney as well, who doesn't need an introduction, but for the sake of protocol, we have to. He was born in, I can't pronounce this actually, I think it's Uitenhage, is it?
Uitenhage.
Uitenhage, okay. In August 1945, and he attended the University of Fort Hare. He received a law degree from the University of South Africa in 1976, but was barred from practicing law in Port Elizabeth by the apartheid government. He is a lawyer and also a theologian, and he's been active in human rights for decades.
I want to begin with what I consider progress, and that is the Hissène Habré trial. And he was the dictator, as you know, former dictator of Chad. Hissène Habré sets a new benchmark for efforts to end impunity in Africa. It marks a significant step forward in holding high-profile human rights abusers to account in Africa. And it could be an important model of how hybrid courts can reconcile the often conflicting demands of international law and local sovereignty. Another progress, I would say, is eliminating child marriage in Africa. Now, Africa is home to 15 of the 20 countries with the highest rates of child marriage in the world. And the African Girls Summit on Ending Child Marriage in Africa, as you know, was held on the 26th and 27th November 2015. And the AU, together with the range of partners, launched the African Union campaign to end child marriage in Africa. This was done on 29 May 2014. In April 2014, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child adopted a declaration urging UN member states to set the minimum age for marriage at 18 years for both girls and boys without exception. A fourth successful step, I would say, of progress is the successful democratic transitions in some countries. Burkina Faso and the Central African Republic have provided good examples of democracy on the African continent by conducting peaceful and fair elections. The peaceful transfer of power to the Central African Republic's newly elected president in March was an important milestone. So really, I have more pages of challenges to relate to you. I'm done with progress. Let me move on to challenges. I, together with the current High Commissioner for Human Rights, are very concerned about the shrinking democratic space in relatively stable countries. There has been a broad recognition and concern about the shrinking democratic space in a number of countries across Africa, such as the DRC and Burundi. In the DRC, there has been an increasing number of arbitrary arrests and detention and the disruption of peaceful demonstrations. In Burundi, electoral violence, with protests being violently suppressed by security forces, led to more than 400 people being killed and an influx of more than 145,000 refugees into neighboring countries. De facto one-party systems and A winner-takes-all approach to elections continued to dominate the political landscape across Africa, with a number of incumbent presidents seeking to prolong their stay in power, as witnessed in the Congo, Uganda, the DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, and Zimbabwe. Many civil society organizations, human rights defenders, journalists, and political opponents continue to operate in an increasingly hostile environment, with laws aimed at restricting civil space in the name of national security, counter-terrorism, public order, and regulation of NGOs and media.
Okay, let's have the second speaker, Bani Pitiana.
This is called dialogues. The idea is that we should have an opportunity to share, to talk together, to communicate together, to give opportunities for views and opinions to be expressed across the board. 2016, as Judge Pillay has said, has been declared by the African Union as Africa's Year of Human Rights. She's also explained that that's because 30 years ago, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights came into effect. Now, if you were in that time, you would then understand why and how it was that the Rome Statute, the process towards the Rome Statute, was an important mechanism for providing international jurisdiction for the worst crimes that there were. And those were crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes. So you'll understand why, in fact, that was the case. You'll also know why it was that those of us who were involved in human rights those days, including the work that we all did to ensure that the Rome Statute was passed, which was driven not to a small degree by South African government of that time, would recognize, I think, that that was a time of great optimism. A time of great optimism about, if you like, a new world that had come, great possibilities for the rights of all people. And so it was important to establish the right standards. And one of the first achievements of that was the establishment of the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And that was one great achievement to really signal to all the world that the process of monitoring and enforcing human rights was an important activity. The other one was establishment of the Human Rights Council a few years later as the commitment of the world to do that. So I want to say that those were times of great optimism, great excitement. This is my last point. Clearly, it is not enough to have all the legal norms and standards in place, to have the accounting mechanism for it, if we leave it to those who are in power to police themselves. It's clearly not enough. Clearly what is needed is that moral capacity that doesn't ask for but demands justice. That capacity that, if I might just quote German philosopher Jürgen Habermas, human rights circumscribe precisely that part of morality that can be translated into a medium of coercive law. So the moral quality must be held alongside the legal obligations that very, very often are ignored. So it's not good enough when states say, you know, I report to the Human Rights Council, we do all the reporting mechanism. But actually, if they don't have the commitment themselves to actually make these rights work for the betterment of the people, then probably they're not good enough. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Maxine. I'm a student at UCT. I just have a quick question for Professor Pitiana about, I don't know if there's just your opinion or if there's kind of theorization around this, but why did African states sign on and ratify the Rome Statute if standing heads of state were implicit in ongoing conflicts on the continent? So they would then be liable for prosecution under the ICC.
Excellent question. Please, let's keep this level up.
Hi, my name is Christina. I'm from the United States. This is a question for Judge Pillay. I was wondering, in terms of the struggle between culture and human rights that some people claim, I was wondering what you thought specifically about what some people would call female genital mutilation and what other people would call female circumcision. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, as I know that's a rising issue, especially from the United States perspective.
The ICC, why did the heads of state of Africa sign on the ICC? I think the ICC was an instrument of its time. As we can see that more and more African states are now withdrawing from the two-term commitment that many have made and are seeking a mandate from their countries to extend the term, sometimes even without limit. And the ICC at that time, and with the specter of Rwanda very much present, it was a time when states were really willing to sign on this because nobody wanted to be seen to be open to the possibility of the horrendous international crimes that took place in Rwanda would happen on their soil.
I would say FGM rather than female circumcision. Let's not use euphemistic language for something that is an act of violence and abuse on young girls. And thank you for focusing on that issue. The I think an NGO, that Equality Now, that I helped begin, brought an application and successfully got the US courts to recognize that FGM is a ground for asylum in the US.
I'm Ruben. My name is Ruben. If you are old enough, you are in your 60s, maybe you've acquired tertiary education, and then you cannot be accepted to the workforce. Maybe you go to interviews. Your interviewer will tell you, no, you are old, you are past 60, you cannot be taken in the workforce. Why is that so?
There is no such thing as peace versus justice. It's peace and justice. You can't have the one without the other. And if you doubt me, just ask victims all over the world. It's governments maybe compromise. Even here you mentioned South Africa. Is there a problem between Nigeria and South Africa? Yeah?
Well, there's a friendly rivalry, I think.
Yes. But you're quite right. We had a politically expedient solution in the TRC process. You can't impose such a process in any one country. The people have to accept it. We were not too happy with it. You're quite right. We didn't have justice, but at least we were able to put things behind us and move on towards rebuilding a nation. I don't recommend or not recommend any process. I think it's left to the people to decide this.
Okay. Judge, they say that the final word in a lot of our African communities goes to the wisest person. So we're going to leave you with the last word.
I thought you were going to say oldest, but... Let me begin with the reference to age. Yes, so before I left, I supported the move by civil society to draft a convention to protect the rights of the aged, because there is nothing in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They're thrown in with all the others, but nothing specific. And as we conducted studies, we could see how the aged are exploited everywhere. We have to protect their human rights. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you very much. And I want us to give a big round of applause to our two speakers.